wanted to connect kind of some of the big ideas that we saw in the film to some of the things that are happening right here around us. And it's my great pleasure to introduce our wonderful panelists that we have here today. So first we have Sebastian Egerton-Read, who has worked at the MacArthur Foundation for 9 years. He is the learning program lead, looking out across formal education partnerships and event, learning, and broadcast content creation, including the Circular Economy show, where he is one of the primary hosts. And I've asked each of the panelists to provide 2 words that they'd like to tell you about. So the 2 words that Seb has given me are vision and empathy. Seb, can you say a little bit about those?
Is this thing on?
Yes.
Vision, what inspired me about the circular economy when I started working at the foundation 9 years ago was it was fundamentally about what are we aiming for, and I think it's so crucial to know what are we moving towards and what vision do we have. And empathy, I think we just need more empathy in the world in general.
Thank you. Next, we have Mariette Hoitink, who is the co-founder of House of Denim, a nonprofit organization training the next generation in craftsmanship, sustainability, and innovation to make the denim industry cleaner, smarter, and more circular. This is also their wonderful building that we are in today. She is also the founder of HTNK Amsterdam, Amsterdam's premier multidisciplinary full-service creative business development agency. Mariette gave me technically 3 words, but we're going to allow it. They are create beauty and kick ass. Mariette. Could you tell us a little bit about why
What do I have to add to that? I think that's the only reason why I'm here. It's to create beauty and kick ass. Because that's basically the essence.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thami Schweichler co-founded Makers Unite, which provides a platform for the inclusion of refugees in the Netherlands and Turkey. In collaboration with Patagonia and the Amsterdam Economic Board, Thami also founded United Repair Center, which sits right behind us, a B2B repair business for fashion brands to put repair on the map, creating social and environmental impact collectively. Thami's 2 words are make and unite.
Well, I think
he's also kick-ass,
kicking ass. Now, I think in the discourse of circularity, we are often brought into the rhetoric of thinking on material and thinking how we should transit to energy, electrical cars. But if we're doing everything in a society that doesn't work, we did it for nothing. So I really believe that the making process, material process, should go hand in hand with uniting with a society where people are included and feel that they have equal opportunities. And this should be, in my opinion, a fundamental pillar of a circular economic transition.
Great, thank you. And Anna Poggenpohl is leading the piloting and innovation activities within the circular economy domain of NView. NView runs programs and builds impact-driven startups around reuse globally and locally, including Mission Reuse here in Amsterdam, which is a program that powers the transition from disposables to reuse through innovation, policy, advocacy, campaigning, and knowledge sharing. Your 2 words are disrupt and reimagine.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I think it is really time that we actually disrupt our linear make, wake, dispose model, and really the beauty of that is also, and that's of course the creative speaking in me, that it allows us to really reimagining the way we are having our daily consumption habits, but also our business models, and evolve into new habits.
Great, thank you. So I have a series of questions for our panelists to kind of get a conversation started, and then we have some time for question and answer with the audience. So I hope you'll all be joining in then. But I'd like to start by asking Seb, in 2 lines, what's the circular economy?
Thank you, Sophia. Thank you also for having me. I like the sort of creative ways of saying, be quick. So, in my view, the circular economy is a vision for an economy that, by design, eliminates waste and pollution, circulates products and materials, and regenerates nature. And the work of the MacArthur Foundation shows that not only can that be a compelling vision and like a mandate for innovation, but it can drive economic prosperity and be a response to some of our big global challenges, most notably the climate crisis and biodiversity loss.
Great, thank you. And just a quick follow-up. why make behind the scenes of circularity? Because you are the driving force working with Water Bear to produce that. So why make that? Who do you think is going to watch it?
So I think at the foundation we kind of do three things. It's always three things. If you ever go to a comms 101 seminar, it's always three things. And one of those is like really engage business and innovation ecosystems. Another is engage policy and especially drive insights, analysis, and form policy. But the third is to try and tell compelling stories and drive awareness and education around the idea of a circular economy. Like, our brains are fundamentally wired for stories. So the foundation, we really tell probably hundreds and hundreds of stories about the circular economy every year. And specifically the film, so that's where that sort of scheme of work fits in. But specifically what I like about the series that we created with Water Bear last year that you saw a couple of episodes from just now is what it really shows is that there are individual people at the heart of a circular economy. You kind of get to know Stephen and Safia and their teams in those films who are kind of getting stuck in and engaging with the idea and doing something with it. And that's what is really exciting. And hopefully what those films do are inspire other inventors, creators, disruptors, kick-ass people to jump in and like get involved as well.
Thank you. And I'd like to say there are actually 3 episodes of that as well. So we watched 2. So if you want to continue with the 3s, I invite you to check out the 3rd episode. Kind of building on some of what we saw in the films, Mariette, Secondhand Superstars really focused on the end of life of a garment. Kind of we saw the piles of jeans that have reached the end of their life. But here at House of Denim, in many ways, you're looking at the beginning of life of a garment, of kind of how it's made, where it comes from, what its story there is. So why is that an important place to focus? Why are you starting there in your work?
Yeah, I think, well, I'm really happy to see this because there's a lot of opportunities for this as well. And we do this, so we do a lot of upcycling here and all these things, but that's super nice. At the same time, I really think that we have a supply chain who's a value chain. There are super good people working in Asia and making a product, and we all might have an opinion about it, but it's like, okay, a lot of them are doing a great job. They're on innovation every day, and they really want to make a good product which will last longer. So the thing is that we're in this economy in which it's like, oh yeah, but we produce too much. This is what I also say in the reel. We do. At the same time, what if we would decide at the beginning already to have a system in which is really a value there, and then you create a product which has like everlasting value. Now we don't. We used to buy jeans, you could keep it your life. It was also one of the more expensive items when I grew up. It's like, okay, you had to save some money. Now, this price didn't go up. So that's pretty weird, because I'm super young, of course. But it's pretty weird. So it's still, why not add this value at the beginning already? And I really like it that the whole supply chain wants to be transparent. So there's also a lot of opinions about it. We work here with the best mills in the world, so the denim mills. They are completely transparent. We can go there tomorrow and check it out. So why not work only with the most sustainable ones who are there and who are even on this process of sustainability are doing better every day? So this is what I don't want to exclude anything. I would like to include a lot of things.
Yeah.
And we have a focus here on education because I believe that the only difference can be made by the next generation. So these are the ones who are studying here. These are the ones who are entering the industry, asking the questions, knowing a lot more about sustainability than anyone else. So it's like, I think it's super good.
Yeah, great, thank you. Well, so you talked a little bit about, kind of how you could keep a pair of denim for forever. And so that kind of leads me to want to transition to asking Thami about the work in extending the life of a garment that you all are doing at the United Repair Center. We've all been taught kind of, at least recently, that we should just get rid of something, that a pair of jeans doesn't last, or that it's out of style when it has a hole, you should be done with it. So I wanted to kind of ask, for you, how did you start working on extending that life? How did you say we need to take these items and we need to expand them? And how do you see that fitting into the circular economy?
Well, I think it's interesting. Well, honestly, my background is also not in fashion. I have a really social background and work in social innovation. And by analyzing the future of the making industry in Europe, we identified that the circular transition is going to create a massive amount of jobs in the sector, especially in repair and reuse of clothing. And also, so resale is also included on reuse. So we analyze on the opportunity that repair could create in jobs, and that's what led us to start the United Repair Center in partnership with Patagonia, to say, hey, you have a massive learning on the repair in the last 50 years. Can we use this to share to other brands and help them to create repair programs? This is what we're doing now. So then this is how the program came to existence, and our work mostly is behind the sewing machine. Not my work, I'm not, unfortunately, not that talented, but our talented team is making it happen. But in order for this to exist, we see it's a huge complexity. We're talking about a generation or longer than a generation of consumers that have been taught to buy another item again. And now they buy, until a couple years ago, 52 seasons. And now there's not even more, you cannot even count. And in the document I found really interesting because they, this colleague of them mentions that we were taught to just buy and repair. Yeah, we have been indoctrinated to think that use of clothing or repairing clothing is dirty. So one of the axes of our work, besides doing the repair operation, is understanding the consumer behavior. So we're running a couple of PhD studies on understanding what is the perception on repair and clothing repairs that we have to understand and break the stigma. There's a lot of transition that is necessary on the circular economy that has to do with breaking the stigma, because if you don't get to sell, it's not going to work again. So it's really crossing against the wall. So one axis for us is working with the consumer. Another very difficult axis is working together with legislation, because we believe the transition is necessary to have the producer, the consumer, and legislation working together. So we have, fortunately, the visit of members of the parliament here to understand what is the work that has been done here. We talked intensively with the city of Amsterdam, that influences policy in Amsterdam, and our exchange with other cities across the world. And we're talking to speed up legislation to facilitate, not to make it more complicated, for brands to make the transition. Because then the third, when we're talking into brands, the challenge is that we have, and here in the room we have a few of them, we call them the pit bulls inside the brands. They're really the ones that are going to make the change and make it happen. But the reality is like, it's you have to convince a massive amount of stakeholders in the process, and have to convince that this is scalable, and have to convince it's going to be viable when we're just in the beginning of the process. So the education and the awareness and the interchange is for us fundamental to make the transition exist. So consumer, legislation, and brands working together to make the transition possible.
Yeah, great. Thank you. And I think I'd love to dig into that a little bit more and come back to that, but to kind of bring Anna into the conversation, because I know we've been focused really on fashion here, but you're kind of here, you wear many hats, and one of the ones that you're wearing today is mission reuse. And so, you know, we saw in the reuse role models kind of their focus on coffee cups, and mission reuse is also focused on coffee cups. So I'm kind of curious how NView, which starts multiple businesses, decided, you know, we've talked about fashion here, but decided that coffee cups was kind of the area of circularity that you all wanted to dig into.
Yeah, thanks. I think, yeah, within NVU, we of course believe to really start where we can create systemic change. And that's where we started the Mission Reuse program together with two other organizations, Recycling Network Benelux and Natuur Milieu, because we see that in the Netherlands we have a huge addiction, and also in other countries, to plastic packaging. Huh? I mean, just on a daily basis, 18 million coffee cups are consumed and disposed after only a couple of minutes. And most of them are non-recyclable. We see it. I mean, they look like paper, but they have a plastic lining. That means none of them ends up in any recycling facility. They just get burned. And I think our ambition with the Mission Reuse program is really to make a transition to more reusables, because we see there's a lot of fantastic innovations out there already that are really showing that reuse is possible. I mean, we've seen one in the movie as well with Club Zero, but also here in the Netherlands. And what we do within the Mission Reuse program is, on the one hand, we really run pilots and kind of show that these type of solutions work in practice. We use this knowledge then to share it with the sector and engage in policy, but also use it for campaigning, because I think, as Thami said, a crucial element, of course, is also to kind of change the narrative, to break a little bit with the stigma. And one example, is where we've been doing that just here in Amsterdam, is actually to run a pilot with a couple of different reuse solution providers on a campus at the university and then the Hogeschool in Amsterdam, to really identify, okay, what type of a reusable system really works best for students in this type of environment that can really come to scale to, eliminate millions of packaging a year. And there we really then kind of test it out with different systems, see what matches the habits, and then eventually, of course, use that knowledge as well to share with other universities to kind of really bring that movement into action and, make that happen.
Thank you. And you kind of touched a little bit on the multiple aspects that you work on. And Thami, you really dug into this. So I want to come back to what you were saying about needing to work with brands, needing to work with policy, and needing to work with the consumers. Because I think that that's something that all four of you share, is that your different projects are kind of working on these different angles. So maybe I'm kind of already answering the question, but I would love to hear kind of from you all, who, in your opinion, is responsible for advancing a circular economy? Is it the consumers demanding better products or changing their behaviors to repair or extend their products? Is it brands having pit bulls in the brand kind of saying, like, no, we're going to take back our products and repair it. We're going to go to the denim mills and see how they're doing and make a more transparent project? Or is it policy? Is this something that's like too ingrained? Seb and I were talking a little bit about, like, beforehand about, getting from the UK to Amsterdam. Like, do you fly or do you take the train? Like how much is kind of the environment that's set up around you, and that you need policy to change it. So I'm curious kind of where each of you fall on that, who you think kind of is responsible for leading a change.
I think it starts with awareness, and I think it's not so long ago that it wasn't like the packaging, all plastics, etc. So it's not so long ago that we didn't have all these things. So solutions for problems which were not there, I'm always a bit surprised. Like, we can decide today, okay, we don't need all this packaging. We really don't need it. So, but it is there. And then it's just convenience or whatever. You don't want to be, as a consumer, you think, okay, that's just the way it is, okay, and then you don't know what to do with it. So it starts with, to me, like the awareness of, okay, why on earth did we think we need all this? We don't need it. So
starting with changing behavior and changing awareness.
Yeah, to me it's a complete mindset, but I also don't want to divide. Politicians are people too. They also pollute it. So come on, guys, wake up, everyone. It's like just normal behavior. Let's do the things in the right way, instead of, okay, let's talk. Maybe it's politics, and maybe it's the consumer. Oh, let's point to each other. And what's the point? Like, if you would today get the university to come up with, okay, let's all stop doing this. You bring your own bottle. We fill it here, and it's fine. We can do that. But I'm very on a simple level. I'm very like super simple. It's all humans. It's like, okay, when we talk to then we talk to politics. What's the point?
Well, I think I'd ask.
And then we're like, oh, consumer, they're very ignorant. And then, okay, we talk to this, and then, who knows what he's talking about? I'm like, okay, but as humans, we can decide today. we go home and we think, okay, we're not going to do. I learned one thing today, maybe one thing, and then you change it.
Yeah. So Anna, what has your experience been then with the University of Amsterdam? If the question is, we can just, bring awareness and change it. How has it been kind of working with an institution that, is perhaps interested in change but has some entrenched behaviors?
Yeah, I think in general there we have been seeing definitely quite an intrinsic desire to really make that change. I do think it's really, of course, talking about solutions at scale, and there are also some nitty-gritty details that need to be figured out about how to clean the cups, where to clean them, and to make that on a logistical level also environmentally friendly going, of course. But I think maybe adding to the behavior question, I think in general, of course, consumers have a huge power, for sure. I think everybody has a lot of choices to be made every day, and that has an impact. But personally, I'm sometimes also a little bit tired of that argument, because if you, for example, look at sciences, you see pro-environmental behavior has sort of 4 direct influences, right? And awareness and knowledge is a secondary influence on your values, on what matters. Perceived consequences is a big influence on how you decide your kind of daily behavior. But 2 other big ones are actually access to alternatives. So you need to have these in place. And the 4th one, and that's also quite a crucial one, especially if we look into the circular economy, is having incentives actually to use these alternatives. And I think that's where policy can still play a huge accelerator, because currently, in the linear models, there's a lot of subsidies embedded. It's still an uneven playing field for a lot of reuse solutions to kind of fight that battle of incredibly cheap packaging. So that's a tough one. And I think there, of course, now we see with the legislation change in the Netherlands, it's a fantastic opportunity that really fosters innovation, that brings people together also to collaborate, to really build these infrastructures for more reusables, to be able to really come to scale. So I think it's also not just the consumer.
Yeah. Thami, what is it like working with, brands with names that we all know, like Patagonia, like Scotch and Soda, that, we maybe don't necessarily think of, or don't think of sending things back? How are you changing some of those behaviors and then creating the ability to do it, like Anna was talking about?
Well, I see this in 2 levels. I think I massively agree with the awareness as a starting point. You only know that something is wrong from the moment you know that is wrong. So education plays a fundamental role into changing one of this I call it the tripod, as disruption. So the producer, the consumer, and legislation. To understand that something needs to change, to understand that a system has to move. But if one of the legs of this tripod moves too quick, it falls apart, right? So if I have the consumer screaming, hey, I want to only have fully circular clothing, the producer says, yeah, how do I fix it up? And you have the legislation really pushing, hey guys, I have to transit now. And in too much of a fast space, you stretch the whole sector and doesn't make it work. So it has to be some sort of a harmony to make the sector transit. And we see some very pragmatic approaches happening in other sectors. That's why I find fascinated about circularity, because it's about interchanging interdisciplinary. It's about fashion talking to food, talking to traffic. There's this example in France that flights now that are shorter than an hour can only go by train. So then I have no choice. So I had the same dilemma, I should go to London, but I'm going to miss this appointment. Do I go by train? And then I just go by train, because that's the only way to go. I think little by little they transit a lot. Of course, this is only possible there because that has been a train infrastructure that has been laid out in the last 50 years. So we're looking at long-term transition. I wonder what will be the opinion of all of us 50 years from now, looking back, hey, remember the beginning of the circular transition? I think at the moment we are in, especially if you're trying to make change as a consumer, as a producer, as whatever position you are really frustrated. I think, especially if you look at, Davos just closed down. It's like, Jesus, what did they do again? Like, it's so frustrating to see that the movement is not really as fast as it could be. And the ambitions of the 2 degrees of Earth warm, well, let's just make it 1.5 degrees. in 2030, let's make it instead of 100% circular, let's 50%. Everything is falling back apart. So I believe this is a beginning of a transition, right? And I think it's important to keep your head down and do your work and believe that is creating change. We see this happening in our work in a very micro level. So we see the effect that we have inside one brand, learning from another, and an insight from this consumer going there, and the legislation going here. We see how this is moving little by little, but it's really a big transition that they're willing to work with. If you look at especially our sector, which is the basic setup of the fashion sector is we produce 100 to only sell 60. It was designed like this, and then we bring to shops, and then is little by little things are changing in the sector. So ideally, we're only gonna, if we need, produce 100 to sell 100. So it requires so much innovation that still needs to come and infrastructure for the sector to accelerate.
Yeah, thank you. So you talked about kind of being at the beginning of a transition and what we're going to look back on. And Sab, I'm curious, you've been at the MacArthur Foundation for 9 years. So what have you seen in those 9 years? You know, what would you say from one of the voices that's really been kind of leading and trying to start this conversation?
Do I get more than 4 lines on this one?
Yes.
I'm still really young as well. Yes, I mean, I was actually saying to someone earlier, before people joined, that when I joined the foundation, I didn't know what the circular economy was. And I lived about 3 miles away from the MacArthur Foundation's offices. And what I've seen during my time at the foundation is a term fundamentally come alive. It's in many of the world's largest businesses' core strategies, their CEOs are talking about. It's in legislation in countries and cities and in the European Commission and in the UN. There are hundreds and hundreds of innovations being generated over and over again. So in many ways, what I've seen is, when I actually look back, is an incredible momentum and movement. But of course, like the scale of change, you're trying to fundamentally, people always ask me this question, you're trying to fundamentally change the economic system, and people say, well, why hasn't it happened already yet? It's like, well, actually, it's quite a big task. I wanted just to really come back on the agency point very quickly, because I talked about the 3 areas the foundation works on and focuses on, and that kind of hints at where we think agency exists, right? That we have this very heavy focus on business, innovation, and policy incentives. But just in that other area, I hate the word consumer. Because watch me try and consume this. It's a really, really convenient piece of framing, because it indicates 2 things, right? One is it says that this is a way after it's sold, and that fundamentally is not what happens. And actually, when you say that I'm a customer, I'm a user of this, it invites the question, what happens to it after I've been a customer or a user of it? And the second is, it positions people's agency in the economy as kind of being, you just buy stuff, or you just take, it's just about using stuff. But actually, people are designers, people are citizens, people are working in supply chains, people are creative, people are storytellers, and all of those are really, really valuable functions with huge agency in terms of the impact you can have on your local economies or the businesses you work in, or whatever way in which you're participating in the economy, your cities. And I think it's really useful so when I think about our third bucket of work, our kind of storytelling and engagement and raising awareness, yes, there's decisions, positive decisions you can make as a purchaser of things to participate in a new economy, but there's also so many other things that you can be activated around, and I think the more we can talk about those things, the better.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, I think that's a great note to kind of transition to the many types of people that we have in this audience. To the audience members. Now I don't know what word to use. To all of the wonderful people who are here tonight. And we've got a couple of microphones that are going to be passed around. So we'd love to open it up to see what questions any of you might have for our panelists, kind of build on the conversation here. I have more, but I don't want to hog all the time.
I just want to say you're so right. I'm like, okay,
Is someone recording this?
he's like, damn,
Send this to my
you
mum.
nailed it. You really nailed it. I'm like, oh, this is interesting.
Yeah.
The thing you really hate, and you are so right, because it's.
Well, great. I don't know what to say.
I'm gonna hug you. I'm gonna- Sorry, guys, it's very quiet.
Yeah, anyone want to get started? Well, I'll start with a follow-up question then, which is, kind of following up to Seb, and maybe this gets at some of what you were digging into. I was reading a recent article, I think it was from last fall, on the Ellen MacArthur Foundation blog, talking about circular-ish. Because I think we've talked here about all the ways that people are trying to take action, and each person kind of is coming at it from a different angle. So, kind of, can you tell me a little bit more about circular? We've talked about circular economy. What is a circular-ish?
I have a friend at the foundation I've worked with since he was there when I joined the foundation, and he's going to be so pleased that his term he coined a few years ago is being talked about in events all around the world. Circular-ish. I can't wait to tell him.
If you don't want it to be, you can just shut it down and
just
say
not
we
mention
officially
it,
don't recognize that
But
term.
I think our circular design lead actually coined this term, circular-ish, and it came from a place of it's very easy to step back and look at something and say why it's not circular. A bit to what some of the other panelists were saying about like the scale of change. It's quite hard to be 100% circular when most of the system is linear, and it doesn't feel that helpful to step back and say, well, that's not circular. That's not a circular economy. That's not good enough. It's very useful to be very clear on a definition of what the circular economy is and to set very high ambitions. But it's also then useful to celebrate what is circular-ish about innovations and about design efforts, to encourage that kind of like there's no innovation without failure, to encourage people to engage with the concept, to get stuck in, to try and make better things. And so that's where that term came from, the celebration of things that are on the way somewhere between linear and circular.
Thank you. Yeah.
Which I guess we all are.
Yeah, this is there. You can see it there. We always say we work towards a brighter blue. We are working towards a brighter blue. This is what we're still doing. Started this 12 and a half years ago. We already thought then it was the end of the rat race. So we thought, okay, let's do it now. And then we are still working towards a brighter blue. And every effort is one. So, and I really like that because and also the failures are so interesting. It's like, oh, okay, let's see next year maybe.
Yeah. Well,
And we're not allowed to make mistakes anymore. That's the thing. It's like, oh, it has to be.
Yeah, and that's education as well, right? Like when you get into that educational space when it's okay to be wrong, it's okay to make mistakes, okay to learn, and it's really crucial.
Yeah.
I think that's a very on the ground. That's a very important element that I believe that especially governments will need to understand, because you can make mistakes when on the education process, but you cannot make mistakes when you're on business. And circular transition is about inventing, creating new models of operating, creating, innovating things that were not existing before, designing products that were never put in the market before. It's mostly about failures, and unfortunately, the effort it's usually taken on the shoulders of the innovator, and the cost of circular transition is then not shared equally by the benefits. And so if you create, for instance, jeans that saves water, and that would have a lower CO2 footprint, and you give in a broader spectrum of impact that a normal would be. So, but the development of this, other stakeholders should be involved into the benefit to this. So, interacting in making it possible. So, I think this is very important element of transition.
Yeah.
There was a question there.
Yeah.
I think,
Yeah. Please.
why not?
And wait.
Hi, here. Oh, no, I don't want that.
Otherwise, we
No, I'm just kidding. I guess my question was
Can I ask you? Can I ask your name?
Bianca. Hi.
Beate.
It's become a bigger thing. Anne was saying before that it's not so much of a level playing field, you know, across the whole circular economy, and then within, it seems like it's also not. And a question I had is the MacArthur Foundation, for example, works with some really, really big companies, and obviously smaller kind of innovators have a lot of a bigger hill to climb. And I wonder with this idea of circular-ish, if that is sort of the same thing as in the environmental movement of 1.5 degrees can be 2, can be 2.5 as long as we're trying, right? I wonder if you, from your experience in working with bigger names, if you've seen the bar lower or if you've seen the receptiveness away from the idea of being able to trial and error, if companies are actually willing to do this.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there are advantages to being big, but there are also, you know, disadvantages as well, right? Like actually every kind of shift in an economy has very big organizations that are losers and new organizations that emerge as winners. So the foundation, we work with sort of hundreds and hundreds of startups as well as with large organizations, and that when we think actually those different scales are really, really important. And I think circular-ish applies at both scales. Like if you're in a large organization, you need to work out where you're going to start. How are you going to try and shift the kind of tanker again, because you're in the same framework of incentives as a smaller organization. And if you're a smaller organization, you need to ask yourself how you're going to start. I think that it is very important that alongside celebrating the path to circular economy, that you're also setting the ambition levels, like that you're measuring progress and setting clear targets that can be measured against that are at that 100% circular economy level, or whatever the right ambition level is. And we did that at the foundation, right? So we have our New Plastics Economy Global Commitment, which is a public tracking against targets in the plastic sector from all sorts of companies, large brands, fast-moving consumer goods companies, recyclers. And I think those two worlds are really important, the kind of design innovation world and the kind of ambition, big goals, because they also inform how other people with agency engage and the policy landscape.
Yeah.
Hi, Emmanuel. Just a quick question, like on what would be the end game of circular economy? Because it feels to me that it kind of would end up at some place where we go back to a local economy, and rather than what we have now, like an economy based on exchanging goods all over the world. So would that be the end game, like coming back on a local scale, or is circular economy can be on a worldwide scale?
Well, I love the question. I can give my 5 cents on it. From a philosophical perspective, right? It's not from a scientific background. But
Let's get to wine and philosophy.
to wine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really believe that we're transiting to a sustainable transition has to do with localism, which is identifying local qualities that can be replicated globally. Connectivity. So if I have a practice here, so for instance, Denim City, they have the education program here for students, and they replicated this in São Paulo. So imagine the scale of impact they create by bringing this to a community that otherwise their brands have never heard about the word sustainability, right? This massive transition happening there. Same knowledge, online, you're sharing this. I think has to do with proportionality a lot. Because we identify with things that are closer to us, so you would identify and give value to the guy that sells tomatoes around your corner, right? And have no idea where this tomato from Albert Heijn came from. Actually, from the Netherlands. But I think this relationship also creates more value to the products that we're existing with. And I think the less value is shared. I think it's really important to have the aspect of sharing. As opposed to capital transition. Having knowledge share, having products there shares. So the concept of ownership today, we buy, the consumer word, we buy and have to own it. In a circular transition, you're not own it, and you're having you live in part of the life of this product, but it's going to keep going on to the next user, to the next holder of this. I believe that. And you said the end game. I'm a bit scared about thinking about the end game because the purpose is not to have an end, right?
Thank you. Yeah, I think there was another question. Yeah.
Hi everyone, my name is Dan and I work at the B-Lab. I had a question related to the policy discussion we had earlier. There are a lot of great things happening now at the EU level, but as we're all based in Amsterdam in the Netherlands, I was wondering whether you could share your perspective on what's happening now on the Dutch policy field and whether you think that we are ambitious enough or where we could eventually maybe even improve.
Is that on the packaging or is that on the fashion question?
Well, whatever you want to share your light on.
In general.
Shed your light on.
Well, I think there is always an opportunity to be a lot more ambitious, and I think it's great seeing that, especially on an EU level, there's of course a lot of movement with the packaging waste directive, etc. going on. I think it's a big step that now we have in the Netherlands with the legislation. We do, of course, also see loopholes in it. So I'm afraid there is maybe also some, not ideal or intended consequences that are opening up. But I think in general it is at least a very strong opportunity to really foster innovation, and I think it also fuels really the urgency. That's what we definitely experience, that also it allows us to bring, usually that our competitors in the room that all of a sudden realize, okay, if we really need this infrastructure, we need to start working together. And I think that is something without legislation that probably would not have been possible because there wouldn't have been that urgency. But of course, I think there's always a bit more and better and improvement on the legislation for sure possible. But I think a good first step.
And are there then countries within the EU, for example, where the policy level playing field is more ambitious and therefore steering more innovation?
I think to our experience, if you relate to fashion, you see France and Germany really leading the pack. I think for some reason, the way that Europe has laid out the last package of policies of transition for the coming 8 years now, is we first they set up the law and that they're thinking how to do it, which I find a great thing because it's so complex to roll all things in Europe that it is necessary to have a first move. So France has taken a lead in fashion, see a lot of legislation. So for instance, in the Netherlands, we're still talking about the extended producer responsibility and how to implement it. They did it, it's already more than a year effective over there. And now they're thinking, okay, what do we do with the money? How do we set up organizations to recycle and to repair and to use the revenues? And they're doing a lot of it's a bit of a tough thing as we see. You see a lot of complaint from brands saying how they're doing these demands, how can we deliver this? And we find really relevant. In the Netherlands, I'm always very critical, okay, how this is taking so long? But I realize that we are not really bad. I think there's a lot of forward thinking that's happening here that I thought that the Danish or the Swedish will be leading, and then there's a lot of things they're lagging behind or learning how to develop. The city of Amsterdam is massively ahead of its time. If you think of the donut economy in Amsterdam is the first one to be set, and there are a lot of cities setting up this in the world, so it's really inspiring to see legislation coming up. And I think my credit goes to the way they're setting up the responsibility on brands to push recycling, which is a connect. You're just cutting all the life possible in the meantime. So you use a product and then recycle. And I believe that there's I'm trying to sell my fish here, so I believe that. No, but repair and reuse, they offer a massive employment opportunity in the future. So I think it's a bit difficult. So we're pushing and we're ahead to try to do this.
I think we have time for one more question, and I believe there was a hand up here, but I don't know if the question still stands. Yeah, it does. Okay, great. Just grab the microphone and.
Hi, I'm Frank. The question, actually, I'm helping a friend. She happened to be the Circular Hero of 2021 tomorrow, Klaske. And she was telling me that whenever she works, that she, I wonder, there's a question I need to answer for her, I guess, because I'm helping her tomorrow with a little bit of her storytelling. Isn't the term circular economy too big for many people to comprehend? And isn't that a really big problem? Because we talk about waste, we talk about resourcing materials. Isn't that really something that actually that doesn't help the discussion and getting people to understand what we're actually trying to do here? And how can we solve that problem, possibly?
And you want it to be solved for tomorrow.
Yeah.
Hey, you know, yeah. Okay, so tape it. No.
Yeah, I think it kind of coins into what Seb has been saying at the beginning. It's really about bringing these terms to life. And I think that the more you actually have showcases and you have models that actually kind of make it experienceable for people also, what does that mean if I actually interact and engage in a circular economy? I think that is where really then this term is not just an abstract thing in a paper, but actually becomes reality and also becomes sort of a new normal. And I think that's sort of where we are heading towards, I think, with a lot of movement on that. So I think they're like, the experiences, the showcases, the innovations that you can experience in your daily life really help. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
I can comment briefly on that. I mean, it is hard. Like, that's my job, actually. I'm not, yes, I mean, like, it's communicating about complex ideas and complex changes to the economy and society is a challenging thing. And I think I really liked what Anna said about entry points. I think what I add to that is what I do see, well, firstly, I see increasingly much more appetite for solutions and for answers. So I feel there's much more willingness and desire to engage with a bigger idea than a quick solution. And I think the second thing is that when people get the idea, it's an extremely empowering thing. I felt it myself. I said when I joined the foundation, I didn't know what the circular economy was. And when sort of a few weeks in, I'd gone from a kind of place of feeling somewhat like depressed and negative about things like the climate crisis and waste and pollution. It had been a sort of place I'd gone to feel a bit depressed. And it was incredibly empowering to think, well, there's something to aim for, there's a solution. And so it's worth the effort to try and encourage people to understand it. But there are lots of different entry points, and for different individuals, those entry points are going to be whatever context they exist in.
I sort of like to share a model that we all have the same idea of what circular economy is as a huge vision that could answer to many of the crises that we have in the world. But we all have these different models. I mean, everyone has a beautiful model, but there's so many versions of that it really helps, I guess, the scientists in a way, or the academics on that. But for people that work on, because I've worked in many of your, I used to see more about you, so I know exactly what you do, exactly what we meant by it, but it's a different story that you were telling. So yeah, it was.
Yeah. Well, I think.
I'll give her a question.
Okay.
Why not?
Marta, go for it.
I'll be quick. I'll be
Yeah.
quick. Yeah. I'm just thinking about having listened
Sorry,
to.
I don't know your name.
Sorry, I'm Marta. I'm from 5 Media.
Sorry.
I have a question because I'm listening to you guys talking about a circular economy being very much focused about consumers and products, where I'm thinking also you're asking how do we get people to get involved in this, understanding this. Isn't there a way that in a circular economy or like in your strategy talking about this, that we still have to think about where is this product from? Where has it been made and how has it been made? Because looking at the products, let's say in fashion, where the face of the people that have been working there and the conditions kind of makes us have an emotional relation to the beginning of the product. So you feel maybe more responsible of keeping this alive instead of, as we've been used to before, not really knowing where our products are from.
Can I answer this one? Because we do this on a daily basis. Because I believe you can hear so much and see so much, but if you experience it, it's going to be different. So we do courses here. In 3 days, you learn to make your own jeans. the first, and it's for everyone. And we prefer people who don't have any experience behind a sewing machine. We love these people who don't have any clue. So, and they come, first thing you do is we go to the fabric. And then we explain about that this is post-consumer recycled denim. And then people think, okay, I don't exactly know what that means. So you can ask all the stupid questions, and then we just start like this. So you feel the fabric, and then you explain you don't have to wash this fabric so much. Oh, really? Why not? Because, yeah, people tell me you don't. So it's like a very nice way. Then you make your own fit. So it also fits you, and then you go behind the sewing machine. You make it, and then you can put something with a laser, because we have a sustainable lab here. You can use the ozone machine, you can do laser and all these techniques. And then in 3 days you have a pant, and you will love it for life, for sure. Because you had a great experience, you learned everything on this topic. You could ask all the stupid questions. You share lunch with people you don't know. We have a course on Valentine's Day, the day before and after. We have people, a girl from Arkansas, people from Switzerland, they come over. So they never met each other, and then they make their own pants. And then they go home and they're like, ooh, look at me. So, but it's a very nice, tangible way of getting into a topic which is so difficult, or not. So it also makes it really into something you treasure.
Being in contact with the making process, right, which connects to create an awareness of being in contact with the making process, and being aware of what does it take to make a product.
And we also do this for shop managers, for stores, because they have the same questions. And the funny thing is they sell in a different way afterwards, because you just think, okay, maybe it's a better idea to buy a pant which is really good, and then you explain a user or someone who's trying to buy something. You explain them a little bit more why this product is so nice, and so I think it's a really nice way of doing this, and we do this for all different kind of people. So it doesn't matter; don't have to be fashion people. It's just all the other ones who really love to make things, and it's what you say. Then you think, oh. Can you imagine, because we also explained, this should be finished in a factory in 13 minutes, maximum. So 13 minutes is the max for a pant. And then you're like, oh, I'm here 3 days doing this thing, which is really then you see, oh, why are we doing this? Why the speed of everything? And then you just get into a totally different vibe, for sure. So it's $4.95. $4.95 for 3 days, and afterwards we have drinks.
So I think those last two questions actually lead in perfectly to my last question to the panel, which is the word economy sounds like something so big that we can't influence, that we couldn't possibly have anything, any say on as individuals. So what is one thing that everyone in this audience could do this evening, this weekend, at the Valentine's Day 3-day course? What is one thing that we could all do to go advance the circular economy? So I'd love to ask each of you. We'll start with Seb.
You can take, it is possible today to take part in a new economy, to what I always think about, when you're making individual choices, if you are a customer or a user, it's really powerful to make choices that are positive opposed to choices that are less bad. There are a lot, and that's not to say you shouldn't make choices that are less bad. It's good to make choices that are less bad as well, but participating in a new economy, whether that's participating in a reuse system or a resale system or repair system, that is a really powerful way of engaging with these new business models. I've got a second one.
Okay, go for it.
You can also take part in regenerating nature, even by just drilling holes in your fence posts. Bees love holes in fence posts, and that is an incredible way of regenerating your garden and making space for nature. And there are lots of little small things that you can do like that. So actually, but again, doing positive things, not less bad things.
Okay. Well, I'm hosting the second edition of the Natural Wine Festival here on the 11th of November. You're all welcome. This is about regenerative agriculture, and this is about the value of wine. And there's a lot of these shitty stories right now about nature wine. If you see it on the TV, you think, oh, that's really bad. But it's the same principle. So it's people making something, and then why put all these chemicals there? We can have like great wine. So you're all invited, 11th of November, here and next door. Really big.
Thami.
Well, I think on a very pragmatic note, I really believe on the power of connectivity, and I find that we all play a fundamental role into sharing the knowledge that we acquire. So you are all sitting here in what to my opinion, not because of me, but because of these people and you, a very inspiring event. But as the note that is shared, it's circular economy is a very daunting term to be addressed and understood. And I was challenged once because at Makers Night we produced the closest to most sustainable garments, and someone just told me, say, well, it would be great when people are all over to the world in the Philippines be able to buy the garments you produce. Then they're really sustainable. So if the people don't have access to the same level of education that we have, get to understand what does it take to circular transit, then we're making a transition. So I think it takes all of us to share the knowledge that we have in a very simple way. So my take would be, go back home, and in your Valentine's Day, share the message and push it forward. I think that's the starting point.
Hannah.
Yeah, I guess I have a very practical one. Bring your own cups or use one of the practical and fantastically convenient reuse systems like Swapbox, Backpack, Billy Cup, Ozarka, Vital. There are so many out there. Just use one of them. That's even more convenient than probably, and one that's probably not a very obvious one when it comes to plastic packaging or packaging in general, but a very important or impactful one can also be if you actually change your bank account to a sustainable one to sort of de-invest.
Thank you. Great. Oh,
Can I
yeah.
just say one?
Okay. Full of
Sorry,
ideas.
I know,
Yeah, no, great.
I've been
You'll have long lists for this
hosting your
weekend.
shoes,
Yeah.
and it's horrible when someone does this. I think that it's the wrong question, though.
Okay.
Oh,
Like, actually,
now we're getting
Great.
I think it's more interesting to ask yourselves, what are you going to do over the next 5 years than what are you going to do tonight? Because we are living in a kind of decade where these things are going to be decided, and as agents in the economy, you can have huge impact in 5 years. Of course, you can have small positive impact tonight or tomorrow, but you can have huge impact over the next 5 years. So that would be the question I'd think would be good to spend some time.
Great.
Can't answer that one for
Thank you.
tonight. But.
So with that, I'm going to, in a moment, invite up Jasper to talk a little bit about the snacks that are downstairs, as we all are consumers, specifically using that word, in the circular economy. But yes.
Well, maybe not
eat
food, though, to be fair. You probably will consume that.
Exactly. But before we do that, I want to thank House of Denim for letting us take over their space for this evening. I'd like to thank Waterbear and Ellen MacArthur for the great film that we saw, and of course, I'd like to thank all of our panelists for their time and their insights.